Well, hi everyone and welcome. I'm Maureen Blandford, VP of Marketing here at GS, at GiveSmart. We call it GS for short. And welcome to all of you fabulous fundraisers. These are trying times for sure, but unlike our webinars from even, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, mid-March, we are all starting to see some bright lights and we could not share. So today is actually the second episode in our Pivot Success Series in the hopes that we can all continue to inspire each other in the art of the possible. In today's episode, we are joined by Paige Kaiser, who is the auction co-chair for the Seymour Johnson Air Force Base Officers and Civilian Spouse Club. Paige has been kind enough to stop by and share both the human side and the data side of her story. Paige, thank you so much for joining today.
Glad to be here.
Also with us today are our very own Carly Ford, Paige's GiveSmart Customer Success Manager, and Patrick Clark, GiveSmart's Head of Customer Insights. Carly and Patrick, thanks to both of you for joining today.
Absolutely.
Happy to be here.
Before we get started, I just want to point to the chat section where we have populated a few resources that y'all might find helpful, some other customer successes, and a couple of blogs that have been super popular and really helpful, including, I think it's 15 auction items that don't cost a dime. So don't forget to look in chat. And then I've asked the team today to hang out for a bit at the end of the presentation to answer any questions you might have. Now, before we get started, let's just get a pulse on how y'all are feeling. So are you feeling like, now what do we do? Are you starting to refigure 2020? Or are you already in the place of like, okay, this is the new normal, let's do it. So if y'all wouldn't mind weighing in on that. And Paige, while people are answering the poll, can you just give us a high level on your mission and what you do with those funds?
Yeah, absolutely. We are a nonprofit private organization operating on Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. And we fundraise throughout the year in several different capacities to support both our social and charitable functions. But the sole purpose of our auction is to raise college scholarship funds for military dependents, which includes children and spouses of military members.
Oh, love it. And is this annual event, which I think you've done for 6 years, is that largely how you fund the scholarship mission?
Yes, that's completely what the focus of it is. It's the only way we raise money for the funds for scholarships.
Yeah, so I can imagine that was quite a panic, and so we'll hear about this. Kelsey, do we have enough people weighed in to go ahead and populate the poll? Wow, actually, this is really nice to see some movement from next week or last week. Carly, is this resonating as you're working with GiveSmart customers?
Yeah, I think it's really encouraging to see how at first it was kind of crazy and everybody was like, now what? What do we do? And this is everybody's starting to get a little more comfortable. Like, okay, there is hope. We can make a plan with this. We can roll with it. So yeah, that resonates a lot with me and how everybody seems to be feeling.
Perfect. All right, then with that today, here's what we're hoping to cover in the next 30 minutes. So how Seymour Johnson found their path forward, the fundraising components that they used in their pivot. I think it's always really helpful to talk about donor reactions because change is hard for people, right? And so it's good to know what other people went through and how they reacted. Paige is also willing to share some of the high-level results compared to their plan A. And finally, Patrick will join us to talk about some interesting data points. Patrick's always got the good news on the data. So with that, let's talk about Paige. So you had this decision kind of early on. So tell us about your now what moment. And I think your event was for March 21st. When and how did you realize that wasn't going to happen?
Sure. It was a week prior, and really things just changed for us overnight. Everything had been running pretty smoothly, and then the governor came out of our state and made an announcement suggesting that mass gatherings over 100 be canceled. We had significantly more people ticketed for our event than that, so we pretty quickly realized we were going to have to shift gears. So I had a conversation with Carly just to talk about our options, and then it became really apparent to our planning committee that going completely virtual was our best and only option. So we were thankful that we were already set up with GiveSmart for mobile bidding. So we really appreciated the resources that GiveSmart gave us to just kind of carry everything over to a virtual format. So we had a week to really focus on getting the word out and getting people excited about the change. And we just tried to focus on salvaging what elements we could, like our favorite things from the live event, and how to get creative and put them into a virtual format.
Oh, love it. And remind me, was this your first year you were doing mobile bidding? Had you been doing pen and paper before that?
Yes, this was our first year doing mobile bidding.
Well, what a year for all of these things to happen. And Carly, over to you. So I know this was early in the process for you as well. What were you thinking?
I mean, we're all learning as we go, and I was just super happy to be able to have an option for them. Like, hey, I know this is crazy, but we have the option to put on a virtual event. So let's put our thinking caps on and get creative and see what we can do.
Perfect. All right, and with that, let's talk a bit about fundraising components. And Carly, if you can kind of help us understand what you all did before the event as well as during the event.
Yeah, so before we had originally planned on having a silent auction, a live auction, and a small donation campaign along with a dessert auction and some fun interactive instant buy items. And so the homepage was set up awesome. It had a little video, how to bid, and just about Seymour Johnson and what they do. And then with the pivot, some of the fundraising aspects had to change a bit, but luckily we were able to maintain the integrity of most of the components. Most of the ticket purchases, the guests were generous enough to just turn those straight to donations. And so that was really awesome. And then the virtual auction, or the virtual program, ended up consisting of the silent auction, which ended up opening around noon the Friday before. And then on Saturday, which was the main event, we continued with the silent auction. And then around 8 p.m., the premium items opened. And these were previously the live auction items. And so these were made available to bid on for about 2 hours. So that's what made them quote unquote premium items. And then along with that, Paige did a really great job creating some vote items that kind of combined the dessert auction with the fun instant buy items that she had set up for the original in-person event, but we pivoted and she featured these as most wanted desserts. And so for these items, guests voted on their favorite dessert for $2 a vote, and they could vote as many times as they wanted. And then these closed around 9:30 on Saturday, and a winner was drawn from the votes on each item to receive a gift certificate to that bakery. So that was a really, really creative idea and a way to maintain all of those fun interactive aspects of the original event. And then she did a really great job creating ads throughout the items page, featuring the premium items and the items with no bids and all of her sponsors. And then she can touch on this a little bit. Oh,
I think we can actually, no, that's okay. I think we can actually, I think we've got something with the ads. I think that might be the next slide, Kels.
Oh.
Or maybe it might be, here we go. Great, yes.
Yeah, so these were really great. She created these throughout the items page. And then if you clicked on them, it brought you right to those items. So it was like a link embedded in those ads to bring them right to those items. So that was really, really helpful.
How did you come up with this page?
The ads specifically?
Yeah.
I had watched webinars all along as we were getting ready for the event that you guys were offering, and I had seen this one on one, I think it was either the week prior or the week of, that somebody was using ad space this way, and I just thought it was great, so I just imitated what I'd seen.
Wonderful, wonderful, and did not plant that question. I was just curious because I knew you had such great engagement too. So I'm sorry to interrupt there, Carly, back to you.
Oh no, that's fine. That was kind of generally what we did. We closed the bidding around 10 p.m. and then pushed out a donation text message after the close of everything. So that was the, yeah.
Good. So let's go back, and if Kelsey, if you can go back to the Make It Fun slide. Paige, if you can talk a little bit about, because one of the hard parts here with virtual, right, is people aren't in person together, and there is a lot of one-to-one stuff going on. And you had such great ideas, Paige, for how to get that kind of engagement. Can you tell us high level?
Sure. I think the main focus for us was social media. I mean, we did use some emails to get in touch with everybody who had purchased a ticket to the event and also with our membership. But social media just seemed to be the way to reach as many people as we could as fast as possible. So we just tried to stick anything we could think of on our Facebook page. We have a Facebook page specifically for the auction and also for our organization. And we kind of have some different groups on both of those pages. So yeah, anything we could think of, whether it was promoting items like you see on this one slide, it was St. Patrick's Day and we gave a preview of what was available. And then I think that's the president of our organization that kicked off the bidding with a video welcoming everybody, telling them kind of how to bid and what was going to be going on during the event. So it was just kind of a way to give a face to what we were doing without being able to see people face to face.
Perfect. And what reactions did you get, Paige? Like kind of qualitatively, what did people tell you or what did they say about that?
Overwhelmingly, it was very positive. I think it was just a time when there was a lot of uncertainty, especially that week as, I mean, announcements were being made, like the numbers were dwindling of 100 people together, oh, then maybe 10. So I think it was just a lot of bad news that week. And this was one thing that was just sort of like a positive thing. This is really the social event of the season for our folks here. And to think of it being canceled was pretty sad. So the fact that we could go on with it, everybody just really rallied behind the efforts.
Love it. And I don't know, should we cover the scavenger hunt now or are we covering that in another slide?
We have it in a different one. The one thing I wanted to add that really resonated when we were kind of just doing some research on what groups have done. This video was like, just made me smile. And I think, you know, credit to Paige and her team of keeping the theme alive. Obviously, a massive amount of planning goes into these events. They don't just happen. And so being able to, you know, do some of these things very creatively and keep it, and like the fact that, you know, she's wearing the flapper dress and still doing it in the video, which we have linked in the resources. It's an awesome video and there's a toast to it. But I think, Paige, I think you said people even did like pop-up parties over Zooms or something like that. But I think it was awesome to see an example of, you know, the creativity and positivity and taking, you know, as you mentioned, that sadness and kind of, you know, turning the frown upside down, if I might, and kind of embracing it and maintaining some of the core, you know, integrity of the event that was planned.
Absolutely. Love it. All right. So now let's talk about a tricky part. And that is our sponsors at these events are so used to having a lot of the spotlight on them. So how did you handle that, Carly, for this?
So she did a really great job on the homepage. Paige made a list of all of her sponsored and featured that right away. And then created ads and had those throughout the items page, some on the homepage, just kind of everywhere being able to feature those sponsors.
And Paige, what was the sponsor reaction to this? Were they relatively happy with it, or did you get any feedback?
Yes, they were absolutely happy with it. I think, like we were kind of talking about before, people were a little bit skeptical when we first decided to do mobile bidding because we hadn't done it before and it was new and people weren't sure, is this going to be a good change? But immediately our tech sponsors were heroes because now they were providing a means for us being able to even have the event go on. So they really, I put their ad everywhere we possibly could and just tried to recognize them and give them a huge thanks for making it possible.
Oh, brilliant. Love that. All right. So Carly, we just have a couple of more to cover. So what about the item creativity and voting? I kind of love how you used this.
Yeah, this was I give credit to Paige. So we before had a dessert auction that we were going to do following the live auction, and then kind of a put your friend in jail instant buy item. And then with the pivot, Paige had the great idea of combining those kind of. So she created vote items with different desserts, and you could vote for $2 as many times as they wanted. And then a winner was pulled from each item, and they won a certificate to that bakery. So that was super creative and such a good way to keep that fun interactive part.
Any feedback on that element, Paige?
People got really excited about it. It was just sort of a thing like, let's throw this out there and hope that we get a little something for it. And I think people were just like, oh, I'll spend $2 to try to get something sweet. So it worked out. And we did actually have like a little twist to it, because we were inviting people to participate from all over. I don't know if you can see on the screen there where it says anyone can vote, but the recipient must be local. So if you were someone bidding from afar, you're most likely connected to someone local, and you could have it sent to that person, which I thought was kind of cool.
Love it. All right, now let's really talk about the scavenger hunt, because I think this was so cool. Paige, take it away here. Tell us what you were doing and how people reacted.
Okay, this is something that we were going to have at the live event. Different items, but we decided this would be a good way to engage folks even in this virtual format. So we kind of tweaked what the items were on it, but we had a prize, the Amazon Echo Dot, and we said if you get 1 entry per post. So use that dress that you had gotten for your live event and still wear it if you want to. Share what you're drinking, your bidding beverage of choice. Just kind of went down, tried to hit on every little element that we had going on, the sweet easy dessert, share your favorite item. So it just was a fun thing for people to have to do besides just bid on things, and it also got people interacting. It was really fun to see the pictures roll in of what people were doing, how they still got dressed up. So I think it added a lot of fun to it.
This has just been, that has been such a fun thing to hear about. Really, really loved it. Okay, with that then, talk to me a little bit about how folks were able to retrieve winning items.
Okay, we tried to really use our item descriptions for being very like informative of what your options would be. We made things available for shipping that we could, but if it was big or bulky, we just said it needed to be somebody local that would win it. And then we sent out an email to winners and posted on our social media that if you were local, you could choose whether you wanted it delivered or pick it up. And then we just kind of mobilized from there and got things out as fast as we could.
Love it. Love it. Okay, great. So now let's talk about, I think we're at reactions, right? So would really be interested to hear, Paige, both as you were deciding to pivot and in the run up, and your communications was so good. But from your team as well as from the community, what were kind of the positives and perhaps some of the negatives that you might have heard, and how did you overcome?
We really got nothing but positive feedback, which I'm really grateful for. People were just excited to see it continue. One really cool thing, I think, just because during this time there's so much uncertainty, it was a chance to highlight especially all of our local businesses that had given items. I think people really saw that, and so here they are supporting us for this auction, and now people can kind of move forward and say, I want to go support them with all the uncertainty. So I think that's really neat. But yeah, everybody was just so behind our efforts and rallied to participate and just did what they could. So it was pretty exciting.
I love it. And would you, how many, now I'm putting you on the spot because I hadn't asked you this before, but how many people do you think actually, or do you know how many people dressed up and did the selfies?
Oh, I mean, I would say we had probably, what I saw, like 50 people doing stuff. So it was pretty cool.
Amazing. Amazing. Love it. All right, and then high level, let's just talk about results. So you had said at the beginning that this annual live event fundraiser is really how you raise to fund this particular mission. So I have to believe that like many of the folks on the call today and your fundraisers around the nation, that thinking about having to cancel an annual event is gut-wrenching for a lot of reasons, not the least of which are the missions you serve. So just high level, what were the results? What did you think compared to your plan A target?
Yeah, well, I would say beforehand, we just kind of lowered our expectations that we had all these items and we still had this great cause. Let's just see what we can do with what we got. But we were really blown away. I mean, we exceeded our best ever event by 46%. So I'd say we just couldn't, we were shocked by how well it went. We couldn't believe it.
Wow. That is terrific to hear. Okay, so at this point, Carly and Paige, you get a tiny breather before we do Q&A, and we're gonna bring Patrick on deck to share some data points that he particularly finds interesting. And the reason that we go over this is because there is a lot of really great information in the data, not just to mine for what you might do in the future or what you might do at a similar event as everyone rethinks their 2020. But how to continue to grow your donor base. And actually, Patrick, before I get to you, one quick, we can stay on the slide. Paige, if I don't think that we've covered this, but in your great communications and sharing via social, did you actually get more donations outside of your current donor base?
Yes, absolutely. We sure did, from far and wide. That was really where friends of friends interacting on social media just brought a lot more attention, and that was pretty awesome.
Amazing. Okay, now Patrick, over to you.
Absolutely. So I love these sort of things, and Excel is the greatest tool I think that exists today. And so using that from the reports in the dashboard, when Carly and Paige had mentioned opening up the auction a day beforehand, I was just genuinely curious to see from a behavioral standpoint, when did people engage? And so the chart on the left-hand side there is kind of, we broke it up to people who, of all the bids that took place, when did they come in? So seeing that 24% of every bid that came into the auction took place the day before, for me is an encouraging thing, because I think opening up as early as you can and generating as much revenue beforehand. It's something we've always advocated, and traditionally it's, money on hand before an event starts is great. But I think, even as people look now more at online and virtual based things, you can open it up, and similar to how they did an awesome job of moving live auction items to Premier, I think we've seen other people, hey, I'm going to open this 2 weeks ahead of when it's going to close, and kind of strategically release items and create almost, I think of it like a music album. They release a single or two at a time before the actual full thing drops. So seeing that people are there interested beforehand, and I think especially to the point about reaching a larger audience potentially with the social media is good. And then we always know that the last 15 minutes creates a flurry. And so seeing that 13% of all of the bids, really over a 48-hour span here took place in the last 15 minutes is always great to see. And that kind of window of time is when we've always recommended things such as activating the countdown clock so that people get a visual, or sending specific text messages, letting the people know, similar to what on the homepage and in some of these social media posts that we look through, over communicating, I think is always good, but especially now as people might be doing other things, or, being flappers and zooming and other kind of things, making it very easy and convenient and letting them know, I thought was encouraging to see. And then, then looking at, okay, we looked at the bidders and what they're doing, but what about the items, and trying to analyze that. On the right-hand side is we saw that not only were people participating, but they were participating a lot with more than one item. So it's not just, oh, I have one item, that's fantastic. I think credit to Paige's team in the solicitation and getting the items that they did, because the day beforehand, 65% of the items in the auction received the bid, which was actually like awesome to see in an encouraging trend. And then similarly, as we look at that last minute flurry, it wasn't just Maureen and Patrick going head to head because somebody's got to win. it was 53 separate items. So just about half of all of the items that people were looking at got a bid. So I think, again, just something to take a look at and kind of better understand. And especially now, I think more than ever, going with the mantra of measuring twice and cutting once is kind of my main takeaway. And as you open up the auction early, previewing some items or doing different things and kind of I think can go. And then I think especially as you look at what about my future initiatives, or okay, I'm getting ready and I have a fall-based event. Taking a look at what happened in 2019 as you get ready for 2020, and what performed well in different things, I think is always just a good idea to get prepared accordingly. And then on this one, I thought this was just fun. When Carly had mentioned that they sent the donate text after the auction had closed, I was curious to see kind of what that did from an influence standpoint overall. So the just as examples, the top message you see on the left hand is what the donor receives on their phone when you send out a message. And then the bottom one is the admin or whoever's sending the message from the system gets a notification, just so you breathe easy and avoid the did it happen. And personally, for me, over the past 5 years, going to hundreds of events, sending messages is always my favorite thing. And watching people react and, oh, did you say something clever and creative? And I think similar to the video and the scavenger hunt, being creative and trying to hook people in different ways, I think is always a good idea. But it was awesome to see that the nudge worked, because of all the donations that came through to this event, 68% of them came immediately after this text message was sent. And I think the wording is also perfect that, hey, if you missed out on any item, you can still contribute. So if somebody had maybe budgeted, all right, I'm going to contribute $250, so I was bidding, and then, oh, I didn't win at the last second, getting them to make a donation. And I think that similar to, advocating opening the auction up early, you never stop fundraising, I think, ultimately at the end of the day. And so sending it right after the auction closes and making it tied to, oh, you didn't win, you can still contribute and support our mission, or sending a message the next day that says, thank you again for your support. If you'd still like to donate, click here. I think just engaging people and trying to capture as much as you can, and doing so in a creative way. And it was awesome to see that somebody did it creatively and it had a positive outcome in the end.
Love it. That's really great. All right. Oh, sorry, Patrick.
You're good. This is too much of me talking, so we'll get that part done early for us. But the final thing that we had here that I thought was awesome is Paige's team had turned on a feature that's relatively new, I think, in the nonprofit space overall, but something that's gaining a lot of traction, and giving donors and supporters the opportunity to cover transaction fees. And so I think it's something that consumers and donors and supporters just across the economy are seeing, and they were able to raise some funds. And we saw that over the past month alone, about 400 or so customers have raised a little over $100,000 through this. And so, as folks try to figure out how can I capture fundraising revenue and do some different things, I would strongly advocate and suggest, turning this feature to what you see on the screen of optional for purchaser, and make it optional for somebody. And obviously they can so choose to either, cover that fee or not. But similar to the two previous slides, turning it on and capturing it if you can, but then at the end of the event, as you look to get prepared for whatever initiatives might be coming, analyzing and, hey, did we generate revenue through this? Were people not participating? And obviously no one knows their donor base better than the fundraiser and folks such as Paige, but it was good to see again, that it worked out and has a positive income. And I think, similar to with the voting and some of these other things, leverage every tool that you have at your disposal. And I think the nice thing about technology in the world that we live in today is, whether it is Zoom or Facebook or some of these other things, beyond just the fundraising platform, there is a lot of tools at your disposal, which sometimes can be overwhelming, but I know that's, folks such as Carly are great at doing. And so I think more than anything, Paige's team did a fantastic job of, the little things. And I think now more than ever, it's the little things that matter the most.
100%. All right, thanks for that, Patrick. And sorry to rain on your last slide parade because it was a very good one. But with that, y'all, we've got questions coming in fast and furious. Please keep sending them to us, and Paige and Carly and Patrick will get through as many as we can in the next 10 to 15 minutes. First question is for Carly or Paige. Our event is scheduled for June 20th. Any suggestions on procuring auction items during this time? Some of our board members are nervous to ask for anything. What are your thoughts on that? Paige, any feedback there?
I mean, that's kind of a different challenge because we were able to solicit before really any of this mess had happened. But I would just say it's all about like supporting one another. And I think it never hurts to ask. I mean, the worst that can happen is somebody says no. But I think if you're willing, especially to say, we're going to advertise your business. We want people to know about you and the good you're doing. And hopefully that good will come back to them.
Great. Perfect. And Carly, as you have, as you're working with customers who are in the throes of this now, what are some successes you're seeing there? What are some tactics?
Yeah, I think even similar to what Paige said, what we're finding is people, it might seem like scary time to ask for things with the uncertain economy, but people are more generous now than we've really ever experienced. We're having extensions on expiration dates and just finding that people are more apt to be giving in this time, surprisingly. So it's really, really encouraging.
And the one thing I have to give credit to a gentleman from Minnesota who said this to me earlier, and it was an awesome quote that he said, well, our mission hasn't changed and neither should our fundraising. And it obviously is a delicate balance, but they did an awesome job. And I think just engaging people, and I think being human, I think goes a long way. And just calling these, whether it's businesses or sponsors or things like that, and checking in and how are you doing, what's happening. And their group did an awesome job. They had a local restaurant that always has been very supportive. And so he called and, checked in, and they were able to get a promo code that they sent out to their donor base. So folks who supported this particular organization got 20% off of a meal. So it was a way where the nonprofit actually helped the for-profit business that's helped them for so long. And so I think, those sort of things are obviously dependent based upon your constituent base and supporters. But I think, engaging people and being human and, checking in to see how they're doing, now will go a long way, when it comes time to some of your upcoming events or things of that nature.
Great. Paige, did you all need a permit to sell online bids votes in your state?
No, we did not.
Okay. I know that might be an issue in some states. Another question for Paige. Can you explain the dessert dash details again? Purchase as many $2 tickets as you wish, but then a drawing, or what were the details there?
Sure. So we had what would have been at our live event were actual desserts. So our first step was to get those donors to convert it to a gift certificate. So we just had a gift certificate for every item, and you could cast your vote, $2 as many times as you wanted for each item. And then we just took from all the people like a random item number drawing to draw for the winner out of all the votes cast for each particular one.
Perfect. Okay. I think that gets to it. Carly or Patrick, have you any advice for doing a virtual house party or where to look for more info on that?
I mean, I'm interested. It sounds a lot of fun. I think that, there is a lot of things, whether it's Facebook Live, Instagram Live, Zoom, different things. So without knowing too much of it, it's a little tricky, but I think, we've seen people do different things with Zoom, and we had an organization that sent out a Zoom code through text message. So they had set it up, and then to make it a little bit more kind of exclusive and feel like a tighter knit community, is they sent a text through the system with the kind of login information to it. And so you had to be in the campaign in their kind of site to do it. So I thought that was a pretty creative idea. We can follow up more after I think the call to maybe help a little bit more specifically without knowing exactly what the idea might be.
Got it. Paige, what were some examples of the premium items in the auction?
Okay, so that was actually a competition. We have the spouse groups from the different squadrons on our base get together and get like large items or like a vacation package. It really runs the gamut. Like we had one really neat cutout of a Strike Eagle fighter jet, which is what we fly here at the base. So that was like a really popular item. And then we had a furniture piece that somebody had handcrafted and built. Then we had a vacation destination to Charleston. It really was such a variety of things. But yeah, we just transitioned those, made them into the silent auction format, and had them just available for that 2-hour window. And awarded a trophy for the winning item with the highest bid.
And was it, this is a question for me, but was it interesting for you as the point person to be able to see all of the auction stuff like electronically in front of you rather than kind of running around on the pen and paper thing?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it was just right at my fingertips to see and track if there was anything. I think there was one person that messaged me that had donated an item and said, oh, I left something off of this description, and I could just add it really quickly. So yeah, it was very user-friendly having it right there at my fingertips.
Love it. Okay, cool. Patrick, so this would be a broader question, but if guests cover those fees, what else is the organization being charged for on each transaction? Does that make sense?
It does. And it's basically the guest, if they so choose to cover that fee, is covering it. So there is nothing that the organization is being charged. The donor is essentially, easiest way I could explain it, if they're donating $100, whatever the service fee may be, they're electing for simple math, if it's 5% or 1%, they would be covering that extra $1 or $5. And then there would be no expense or anything like that that the organization is incurring. The donor is electing to do that themselves.
Great, thanks. Paige, a sponsor's question. How do they react to the recognition opportunities now being completely different? We talked about this a little bit, but it'd be nice to hear a few more details. Any recommendations on what folks can offer if they're doing this virtually?
Well, we definitely used the ad space. There were different levels or places that you could put the ads when you create those. So we just definitely, to thank our sponsors, put them everywhere you could possibly put them instead of just like relegating them to the homepage or among the items. So definitely capitalize on that. And then we also use the homepage. You can add content, different sections. And so that's where immediately, we had not planned to put that on the homepage, but when we found out it was going to be completely virtual, I just wanted to put everybody's name on there that had contributed, whether they were a sponsor or donated an item. We just really wanted to have that there visible so people could clearly see these are all the people that contributed. And then just a huge shout out to them at the end of the event on social media, really, because they're what made it all possible.
Love that. Carly, a question for you. So the question is, you'd already sold tickets to your event, and why should I buy a ticket to a virtual event? What was the motivation? So I know with Paige, they already had a virtual event and the tickets, and I know that tickets are such a great fundraiser. What's sort of the current thinking about tickets, and are there things that customers are doing uniquely with tickets now? Sorry to be on this.
Yeah, like for this one, like I said, most of the guests were generous enough to turn those into donations. But even moving forward, I haven't seen too many ticketed events for a virtual event, but we have seen some tickets, but just lower pricing and giving those guests almost like a first access to auction items that are available before opening it up for other guests to register. So there is some sort of incentive there, and there have been tickets sold for virtual events. So I haven't had too much experience in that field, but a couple events that I have had creating tickets for a virtual event have been successful.
Yep. And to build off of that, I think there's two things I've seen lately that I thought were pretty interesting. One is for events that are a little bit further out. So, in the summer or the fall, as people are, would historically be starting to sell tickets, is offering a discount code and just, again, being a human being and understanding the landscape that we're in. And so one of the nice things about the ticketing system is you have the ability to kind of set those promo codes. And you can put in expiration dates. So, hey, for the next 10 days it'll be, but there's an organization out of the Midwest that did, I think, an amazing job. They actually had to postpone their event. So once they had rescheduled and figured out a definitive date, they followed up, with a 20% promo code, if I'm not mistaken, to let people know, hey, we know this is tough on you and things like that. So I think being cognizant and understanding, I thought was good. And then in terms of groups whose events are, more coming up, is what people have done, kind of similar to what I was mentioning with texting out the Zoom code, is people have, hey, we're gonna, we're gonna do something digitally, and so what we'll do is you can bid and do some other things, but we're not going to include you in this kind of Zoom party. And so what they did is, okay, for I think it was $25 or something like that, you go, you purchase a ticket, and then about 2 hours before the event was going to start, they were going to, I believe it was, they were going to email everybody who had bought a ticket, hey, here's the login information. And so similar to kind of a guest list or a bouncer at, at getting into, any sort of venue, is they kind of made their barrier to entry, for lack of a better phrase, the ticket, and then awesome, now you're in our digital party. And so I think as the weeks progress, it's definitely something we can keep a closer look on. But I think just being creative in different things, and it seems to be working well. But we would definitely try to track that, because I think that's a great question.
Perfect. And we're gonna do one more question, and I want all of you to know, if we did not get to your question, I promise our team will follow up with you. We always do after these webinars. So the last question is, Paige or Carly, so we'll start with Paige. Do you have any decision-making criteria that we can use when deciding which aspects we can pivot to virtual and which ones can't be moved to the virtual setting?
I would just recommend getting as creative as possible. We thought there were some things that we weren't going to be able to do specifically. And we weren't able to do it the same way. We have a jail that we do at our live event where you can lock people up and keep, you pay to send somebody to jail, and then you have to pay to bail yourself out if you choose to. We know people look forward to that, but there wasn't really a way to do it the same way. So that's kind of how the dessert auction kind of got mushed together with that for our virtual event. But I would just say watch as many webinars as you can that give smart offers. There's a ton of ideas from different people and things that they've done and have been successful. And yeah, just try to stay positive. You can do as much as you can and hope for the best. But I think that there's a lot of room to get creative. And it's fun to do that too, I think. So have fun with it and be positive.
Lovely. Carly, anything to add there?
I think Paige said it great. Like she said, we had a couple items that we were like, is this going to be able to be possible? Can we make this happen? And just putting your thinking caps on and creating that vote item was a really good way. So yeah, be positive, think outside the box, ask questions, watch the webinars, because we can just make it happen.
I think the only thing I would add too, that we've seen people do a lot of creative things, is similar to, you can't do a jail digitally, which is probably a good thing, but I think there are things that you can do digitally that maybe you couldn't do in person. And I think similar, Paige, it was awesome to hear that you guys, because of social media and people doing some of these things, we're able to attract people who are now in your constituent list, and you can engage in different things. And we had a group that did a shave to save. And so they did this virtual thing where you could pay, and certain people would shave their heads and send in a video and different things. So I'm sure they could have done that in person, but for sanitary purposes, maybe not. But because people are at home and they can do it. So I think, for everything that maybe you can't do physically at an event, There's a reason that Frozen and is one of my favorite movies, is you can do things digitally that you can't do. And so, 100% in our success stories, we will make sure to try and capture those, as many as we can. And certainly if people have seen something or doing something, please let us know, and we'd be more than happy to share that with others so they can benefit as well.
Okay, note to self, follow up with Patrick about Frozen later. So with that, please join us next week for our third episode with a customer who really was able to amplify their reach with social media. And with that, again, thanks especially to Paige and her team for being willing to share their story. And Carly and Patrick, thanks really to all of you. And then thanks for you guys for joining today. Please share your stories with us